ओम सदाशिवसमारंभां शंकराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्. So as I was saying before we got cut short last class, that the only reason you go to a guru is to learn. Okay? Not one to become a teacher. Teaching will happen. Teaching will happen when you know the truth anyway. Or even if you get sufficiently strong insights, teaching will happen. Okay? And your nishtha will keep growing as you teach. Okay? Nishtha will keep growing all your life. So, you go to learn for yourself, nothing else. There is no other motivation for going to a teacher. Okay? Yeah. That's why I told that story about me being offered that pita and all that. That's not the important thing. You don't join an ashram for name and fame and things like that. No. So similarly here, if Hastamalaka wanted to be Shankaracharya Sishya, Adi Shankara Sishya, Bhagavan Shankaracharya Sishya, the only reason was that part, that dimension of me being everything, he wanted greater clarity on that. We are not bothered whether everyone becomes a teacher or not. Okay? We are bothered about whether everyone can get it for themselves or not. Now, in the next verse that he gives, he is indicating that he is aware of the other part also. Not that he is not aware. Okay? But he wants clarity on that. That's why he is giving the. Okay? Otherwise, it will seem as though this verse is negating everything that I have said before. Okay? Look at that. यथा सूर्यः एकोऽपि अनेकश्लेषु स्थिरस्वरूपाणि अद्विव्यभावस्वरूपः चलासु प्रभिन्नः सुधीषु एकः एव स नित्योपलब्धिस्वरूपो अहमात्मा. यथा एकः सूर्यः, one Surya, not a body, the sun, okay? One Surya, Eka Surya, okay? Aneka Chalasu, okay? Sirasu api Anyavad Vibhavya Swarupa. One sun, different pots of water kept here. Many reflections. And each pot of water has its own quality. Some are muddy, some are clear, some are disturbed, some are still and peaceful. So the reflections are of various nature. Not clear, disturbed, etc., etc., etc. But Surya Ekaha eva. Similarly, he says, Atma Eka eva. You have different thoughts. Some are very nice, good thoughts, happy thoughts. Atma appears happy. Some are disturbed thoughts, Atma appears disturbed. Reflection is disturbed, Atma is not. Reflection is disturbed. Some are very muddy, confused thoughts. Reflection is muddy and confused. Not I. I am objectifying that confusion. Some are very nice and holy thoughts. What you call as holy thoughts. Atma is not holy. Atma is objectifying the holy thoughts. Some are unholy thoughts. You're thinking of wringing someone's neck. Atma is the same. Atma is not unholy. So, varieties of thoughts, Atma is the same. You can also extend it to say that Hastamalakya had an inkling of it, definitely. Must have been exposed to enough of the Shastra, even as a 16-year-old. That millions of minds, different personalities. One Atma. Look at the class here itself. You have got some 70 odd people here, 70, 80 people here. Okay. 70, 80 people. Each one is different. They all are studying Vedanta. Each one is different. Different personalities. One Atma. Thank God they are different personalities. It will be very boring for me if all of you were the same. Okay. All of you are the same. Why do you need different bodies anyway? Yeah. I don't expect all of you to be the same at the end of the teaching also. For that you must come to some of the Guru Bhai meets when we have in Rishikesh. You will find at least 100 teachers there. Each one is a sample by himself, okay? All of us I am talking about. Why? We are not making carbon copies. To be a teacher of Vedanta is not to be a carbon copy of your Guru. Though because of your admiration for him, etc., some people will dress like that. With the cloth on the head, etc. I'll tell you all a secret. Puja Swamiji started doing it when he started growing bald. Or when he used to shave his head, and in Rishikesh it was cold, so after a bath he would start doing it. After that it became a trademark. So everybody started wearing the hair. Okay. That's okay. So in your admiration for him, in your hero worship of him, you may do the same thing. There may be some guys who do the same thing. That's okay. But they are not carbon copies. If you are a carbon copy, you are not a teacher. Like in Chinmaya Mission I have seen, Swami Chinmayanji used to use a pointer to point out Om, BMI, PFT, OET in his public lectures. He used to sit and there used to be a stand kept there with the chart Om, BMI, PFT, OET. If you don't know what it is, good. Find out from someone, okay. And Swami Chinmayanji used to use a pointer to show BMI, PFT, OET. And because Swamiji used to use it, this youngster I saw is standing on the stage and speaking. He can just point with his hand because he's standing. No, to point he'll use a pointer. You're just imitating your Guru because of the hero worship that you have, because of the great sense of admiration you have. That's fine, that's okay, that's alright. But if you're trying to be a carbon copy, guaranteed you don't know. Yes, you will recognize you're from the same gharana. Okay, like in music, when you hear a singer and the audience knows the gharana the singer comes from, you'll recognize, with his Guru there are similarities. So that much is fine. Why? Because every Vedanta idea in your mind has been put by your Guru only. So that much is okay. Not more than that. Okay? Not more than that. Therefore, the variety of personalities, one Atma. Variety of minds, one Atma. Variety of knowledge and ignorance, one Atma. Yeah, even after wisdom there is ignorance about other subjects, no? I can barely operate a computer, a laptop, barely. Basic things, otherwise I get stuck. Ignorance, not informed. That's okay. They can be ignorance of so many topics can be there. Wise person means you know the truth about yourself and the world and Ishvara. That's it. You don't know details of anything except Vedanta. That you better know. All the details you better know if you are going to be a teacher. But what I am trying to say is different minds, different knowledge, different ignorance, different this. Yeah. Then you will see only one Atma that is there, okay? Someone wanted me to split the first line. Yata Suryaha Ekaha api Anekas Chalasu Siraha so api Anya Vibhavya Swarupa. What is that question again? Swamiji, do you think wisdom makes? Can you show that question again? Somebody had just asked the question.
Yeah, it's me, Swamiji. The second part, Stira. The second part of the first line, Stira.
Sopi Anya Vidhi.
Swapya.
Stirasu api. Stirasu api. Stirasu api. Stiraha api. Okay. Stiraha api.
Okay, Stiraha api. Thank you, Swami.
Yeah.
So, yeah. No. Stira api.
Anyad Vibhavya Swarupaha. Anyad Vibhava Swarupa. The Swarupa of illumining everything else.
Anyad Vibhavya. Anyad Vibhavya. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you, Swamiji.
Okay. Yeah.
There was a question from Sugan.
Chalasu prabhinnaha sudhishu ekaha eva. Okay. In all these buddhis, ekaha eva. Sa nityopalabdhi swarupoho matma. When I was answering Panjabikation's question, somebody else had typed in a message. I can't access it through my phone. Can the person do it again? Swamiji, do you think wisdom makes one more aware about one's limitations and ignorances? Yeah. It does. In fact, you don't need wisdom to be aware of your limitations. You just need some self-awareness. When you use the word self-awareness, you are referring to your body and mind. Remember this. Whenever in a management session, psychology session, or even in Vedanta, when we say self-awareness, we are talking about your body and mind. What's happening here? The self is nothing but awareness. That's a different word. That's the Lakshana Vakya of the word awareness, not the direct meaning. Okay. Therefore, all right. Okay. Sorry, somebody called me. That is the problem of using the phone, because you cannot disconnect the phone and then use it. Yeah. Okay. All right. Then he says, after that, he gives a very, very popular verse here, popular among the teachers of Vedanta, and a very, very beautiful verse. Ganachanna drishtihi ganachanna markam yatha nishprabham manyate chati moodaha तथा बद्धवद भाति यो मूढ़ दृष्टे तथा मूढ़वद भाति मूढ़ दृष्टे स नित्योपलब्धि स्वरूपोहमात्मा. Okay. Ganachanna drishtihi ganachanna markam yatha nishprabham manyate chati moodaha तथा बद्धवद भाति यो मूढ़ दृष्टि स नित्योपलब्धि स्वरूपोहमात्मा. गणछन्न दृष्टि गणेन आच्छन्नम दृष्टि. Your vision obstructed by the clouds. What do you say? Ganachanna markam. The sun is covered. Yatha nishprabham manyate cha atimoodaha. Atimoodaha, the great idiot. Okay, atimoodaha. Like atirati, great warrior, chariot warrior, like that atimoodaha, great idiot. Okay. Nishprabham manyate. Sun is not shining today. Sun is not shining? What do you mean sun is not shining? Atimoodaha. In fact, you are seeing the clouds in the light of the sun. You are saying the sun is covered, but you are seeing the clouds in the light of the sun alone. Similarly, when you say, I am ignorant, I don't know, that ignorance is seen in the light of you consciousness. So when you say, I don't know, I am ignorant, you are not ignorant. Yeah, when you say, I am ignorant, yes, ati moodaha only. Like the person who says, sun is not shining. It is in the light of you awareness that ignorance is seen. Atma, I, the awareness, is not opposed to ignorance or knowledge. Atma is not affected by the ignorance. Your mind is affected by the ignorance. Therefore, Atma is happy to be ignorant. But Atma is Ananda Swarupa. Whether there is ignorance or no ignorance, what difference does it make? The sun is shining. What difference does it make to the sun whether there is a cloud in front or not? How can that limited cloud, a few kilometers in span, cover the sun, which is thousands of kilometers across? Only by vision is covered. Similarly, your mind is covered by the blanket of ignorance. The ignorance covers your mind, not the Atma. Atma is not covered by ignorance. That's to say that is a wrong statement. Aupacharikana, you may say that it appears covered. Yeah. Atma is shrouded in ignorance. This is a poetical way of putting it, but it's not true, not real. Your mind is covered in that ignorance, not the Atma. Similarly, Atma is covered by Panchakoshas. The limitlessness is covered by your body. Limitlessness is covered by your body. Wow. I know you have put on weight during COVID, but you are not that big to cover the Atma. No, your ignorance, vast as it seems, is enough to cover the Atma. Your mind can be covered. Therefore, Ganena Achannaha. Similarly, Ajnanena Achannam Manaha. Mind that is covered by ignorance, not the Atma. Atma is always a consciousness. It is not opposed to your ignorance. It objectifies your ignorance, makes it shine, and remains as it is. Then how do you gain knowledge? Vritti jnanena. The ignorance that is covering your mind has to be removed by a knowledge which takes place in your mind. Very important to understand this. I'll never get tired of repeating this. Though I know some of my students may be a bit tired because they have heard it often, You cannot sidestep your mind and gain any knowledge. Even if you are a great yogi and you are sitting down with eyes closed, there is a yogi nowadays who says that no, I don't have to read anything. I just look at it and I close my eyes and I know what it is. And I have examined in his knowledge in some aspects where I have some expertise in it, and I found some of his knowledge is wrong. Okay. Yeah. I have seen that some of his knowledge is wrong in that. So even if you are like that, still that knowledge has to take place in your mind. You may have used a different pramana for it, but the mind is very much used. There are certain yogic ways of knowing certain things, but the mind is very active there and used. So you cannot sidestep the mind and know things. That the Atma is beyond the mind, accepted, it's a fact. You also better accept the fact that Atma is in and through the mind. Atma is beyond the mind, Atma is in the mind, both. Otherwise, you will be like the child who says, when I grow big, I will go in a rocket and see where space is. Why? Because some idiot told him, when he asked, Uncle, where is space? He said, out there where the sun and the moon and the stars are. Not the kid's fault. He says he wants to go into a rocket to see space. The uncle is an idiot. Should I said, no. Space is there, everywhere. In your stomach also when you feel hungry. But I think the uncle had a little bit too much of space here. So he couldn't say that. Yeah. The same way Atma also, consciousness is beyond the mind. In the sense, it's independent of the mind. It's in and through the mind as well. In and through them. Otherwise, how will you ever know it? Beyond. Then, what do you do if it's beyond? You have to go beyond the mind. Who is going beyond the mind? Atma need not go beyond the mind. Atma is already beyond the mind. Mind cannot go beyond itself. No, the knower is going. Knower is only with the mind. Without the mind, knower is no more knower. Who is going? With Swamiji, मेरे गुरु ने बोला था ऐसा. I know your guru very well. He is my guru also. My grand guru. I know him very well. And I also know other statement he used to make. I am a hawker of Vedanta, hawking Vedanta. So he used it as a marketing tool so that people will get inspired. Go beyond, etc. Why? Because you are speaking to an intellectual crowd. And the intellectuals know the limitation of the intellect. Therefore, when you present something as beyond the intellect to them, they get hooked. It requires a little bit more intelligence to see that you cannot go beyond the mind. And if you are sticking to that statement, believe me, all your life you will stick to that and gain nothing. Take it from me. Why? Because I was with this guru, when people are talking about Gurudeva, and rubbed his hands together. Any questions? Because he used to enjoy people asking him questions. And a senior study group sevak, he is no more now. Asked him, Swamiji, I have been meditating for 20 years trying to transcend my mind. Nothing is happening. Swami Chinmayanji looked at him and said straight, nothing will happen. What do you expect to happen? And he laughed. In that laughter, I said, oh my God, I got it, what he was trying to say. But the person who asked the question got upset. I'm a senior study group sevak. I've been serving the mission for 20 years by taking classes, study groups. How can Puja Swamiji, how can Gurudeva insult me like this? You're not insulting. He's your teacher. He was pointing out something. After 20 years, if you have not understood that, what are you doing? Ask my students who have been with me for 20 years how much I confront them. Naturally, part of the teacher's job. So you can't leave the mind behind and know anything. Atma need not know itself. Why should the Atma know itself? Only then you will get freedom from samsara. Na? Atma is already free from samsara. Atma doesn't have the problem of samsara. That is true, Swamiji. Atma is described as Kevala, all alone, not married. This is what the South Indians who call their wives samsaram, okay? Ask her, you are a bigger samsaram for her. So Atma doesn't have the problem of bondage or liberation. Atma doesn't need moksha also. Why? Never bound. Then who needs it? Me. Who is this me? The jiva. The one who is identified with the body, mind, etc. Who takes the body and mind as the only reality that is there. Me, the individual. Now don't ask, is it individual or Chidabhasa or this is all the same, okay? Otherwise I'll expect that question to pop up. It's all the same. You the individual. Ramana got tired of all these questions that people would ask. So he would tell them, who is the questioner? That character has a problem. So he's saying, the mind, the Chidabhasa or Ahankara or Jiva, what is it? Who is asking the question? That character. Who is coming to study? That character. Who is feeling the bondage? That character. Needs liberation. Exactly. That guy. That person who is feeling the bondage. That person requires moksha. The question itself implies you have taken yourself to be other than the Atma. No? You have taken yourself not to be Nitya Upalabdhi Swarupa Om Atma. You have taken yourself as everything other than that. Whatever your standpoint is, that has become the point for you. A view has become the view. So this person who feels the bondage, me, the jiva, the ahankara, the chidabhasa, whatever you want to call it, that I requires freedom. And that freedom will come only when you recognize the Atma as limitlessness. And to recognize that Atma as limitlessness, you need the mind, because the problem of ignorance is in the mind. Therefore, the solution has to be there. Where the problem is, there the solution is. I am the problem, me, the one with the mind. The one with my thinking, my pokey mind. With my emotions and my ignorance and my feeling and my thinking and my identities. And this guy has the problem. This mind, covered in ignorance, is a problem. Ganena achannam. Gana ajnanena achannam. With great ignorance it is covered. Therefore, it is there that the solution of knowledge has to happen. Therefore, vritti jnanam is important. Manasa eva anudrashtabhyam. By the mind alone it has to be gained. It has to be seen. What? Yen manasana manute. That which is not an object of thought should be seen by the thought itself. But how can, if it cannot be an object of a thought, how can I know it? Can you know anything which is not an object of your thought? Nothing will be known. But Atma can be. Why? Because the very truth of the thought. Nitya Upalabdhi Swarupaha. I am always there in my mind as I. I am never out of sight, out of mind. One aspect, what I am, is covered. But that I am, I know. If only with respect to what I am, I need to shed my ignorance. That's possible. Because Atma is not only beyond the mind, it is in and through the mind. That's the beauty of it. If Atma was not in and through the mind, somewhere in Timbuktu, you will never know it. Because not objectifiable. How will you know it? But because it happens to be the truth of I, the subject, it happens to be Nitya Upalabdhi Swarupaha. I can know it. So can you see how important this is? That Atma is Nitya Upalabdhi Swarupaha. Why am I spending 2 days on that one topic? Nitya Upalabdhi Swarupaha. Because only then I will know myself. Only then can I know myself. Why? Because I am right here. I don't have to objectify. I cannot objectify. I need not objectify. It's a cognitive thought. It's a thought of recognition of what I am, not what this is. This is a thought of cognizing an object. I am means cognizing myself, understanding myself. That's why it's called self-knowledge. The self that objectifies everything else is understood, not objectified. Without objectification. That is why this knowledge appears difficult. In the beginning, the knowledge appears very, very difficult because everything that you have studied in your life has been by objectifying. Without objectifying, you have not studied a thing in your life. And this is one thing where you are studying about yourself, the self that cannot be objectified, but which is known as the I, thank God. Therefore, if we are not focusing on the part that's already known as I, you'll never get it. If you're trying to transcend your mind and get it, you will spend the next 50 years of your life doing that and not get it. Like that example of that senior guy who came to Swami Chinmayanji and said, 20 years I've been meditating. That idiot should have understood. But after I finished, went to Rishikesh. This was long before I joined the ashram. Then I joined the ashram, went to Rishikesh and all, came back. He was still on the same track. He was still on the same track trying to transcend that mind. So I said, if Swami Chinmayanji could not handle him, I can't. I said a prayer for him and walked away. Said a prayer for him. God, take care of him. Especially to Brahmaji. Brahmaji, take care of him. Brahmavid cannot. Maybe Lord Brahmaji can take care of him, not me. You know, you cannot really dismantle the ego. A question came up. Is Atma Jnanam about dismantling the ego? Not really dismantling it. In fact, you need a very good ego, a refined ego, a strong ego, an ego with a strong sense of self-worth, an ego which is thinking clearly, to study Vedanta. An ego with Viveka, Vairagya, Samadhama, Ityadi, all that to study Vedanta. You are not dismantling anything. You are only seeing that what you call as the ego is not real. It's only an apparent manifestation. What is real is the Atma. It's only understanding the Mithyatvam and the functional validity of the ego, not taking it as real. This dismantling of the ego, etc., creates problems. Okay. Yeah, because what are you dismantling? Yeah, if you have some wrong thinking, correct it. If you have some problematic emotions, handle it. Handle your distorted thinking, because that's behind your problematic emotions. Handle the trauma of those experiences. Handle the trauma of their experiences. Handle certain patterns of belief systems, etc., that you have been going for so long with you. So handle these things. What are you dismantling? Yeah, because I am spiritual, Maharaji, I am nothing, you are everything. And that mind that says I am nothing, how will you understand that I am everything that the Vedanta teaching is about, which I still have to do? I am finishing the verses before I go into that. So, how will I gain that? I am trying to teach you, you are everything, and you are saying I am nothing because I have dismantled my ego. But the ego is very smart. If you try to dismantle yourself by saying I am something, the ego will come up differently. He will say, look at, I am nothing. I am humble person. Look at all these people. They are all very arrogant. You will get a very humble, judgmental ego. in the name of being humble, you'll become judgmental of everybody else around. See, he calls himself a spiritual student, but how egoistic he is. Should be humble, Why am I saying it? Because I have had a lot of these humble people in my life when I was a student. And they used to call me intellectually arrogant. I would say thank you. I'm very happy with that too. Understand this? The ego can be very, very subtle. So you understand the truth of the ego. The strength of the ego is my own awareness. The ego exists because I am there. Where the ego is, the Atma is. So you recognize the Atma for what it is, the ego stands dismissed. The reality goes away. It's only a dress you wear after that for functioning. Because functioning requires an ego. Unless you're playing the role of a finite person, how can you function in the world? You cannot function in the world. Therefore, ego becomes a dress for you. That's why I said, even though all our sadhus wear saffron, each dress of the ahankara is different. Yeah, definitely you need high self-esteem to study Vedanta. Uddhared atmanatmanam natmanam avsadayed. Gita, Krishna says that in the Gita. You need a very healthy self-esteem. High self-esteem is a healthy self-esteem. High self-esteem is not arrogance. Arrogance is a product of low self-esteem. Arrogance is a product of ignorance, therefore low self-esteem. Yeah. If you are arrogant, that is because you have low self-esteem. Show me any arrogant person and I'll point out where the area of his low self-esteem is. Show me a confident person. That's different. Don't mistake confidence and arrogance. They are two different things entirely. They look similar. Arrogance is pseudo self-esteem, whereas confidence is a healthy self-esteem. So you need that. For the study of Vedanta, you better have a very healthy self-esteem. If you don't have it, you will never understand Vedanta. Because as I said, you think you are nothing, you think you are low down there, you are low on the food chain as we call it. Okay. And Vedanta is trying to make you understand you are everything. If you are arrogant, that means what? It's a front you are putting on. Inside you are focal andar se. Inside you are empty, but outside you are putting on. I remember this guy. He was a mentor to a couple of young officers who joined the company. So as time went, the young officer grew very good in his job. The other person was only a mentor, not a guru or anything. Just a mentor. Self-appointed, by the way. And this young officer grew up, started getting better job offers and got a better job than what the mentor had. It happens. A true mentor would have said what? Great, I'm glad to see you do well, so well. I'm very happy for you. But you know what the mentor said? Look at this tragedy of fate. I'm so much better than you, but you are getting the better job, not me. So all that confidence, etc., was pseudo. If he was really confident, he would have wished that your youngster well. He said, "Beta, good, done a good job." Even if the age difference was not that much, they said, "I'm proud of you. I'm glad that you got it." Yeah. That is a healthy self-esteem. Otherwise, all pseudo self-esteem. So, if you have a healthy self-esteem, then you will understand Vedanta well. And what happened to the young officer? See, the young officer also needs to have a healthy self-esteem. Just because you have been successful doesn't always mean that you will have a healthy self-esteem. The young officer got upset. How can my mentor talk to me like that? Why are you getting upset? Recognize the mentor has some issues. Mentor is an ordinary human being, na? He's not some great wise person or something like that. He's an ordinary human being, senior to you in work, that's all. That is all. So he has some issues that he has to work on. Non-judgmentally but evaluatively recognize that and move on. It's okay, he has some issues. Yeah. Be grateful to him for what he helped you in the beginning. But that doesn't mean you have to be under his feet all the time. You have moved on. He has not moved on, he is still stuck there. But you have moved on. Move on. Move on in life. That would be healthy self-esteem. But if you are getting stuck in that symbiotic relationship, your self-esteem is under big question. I mean, just giving this as an example, okay? There are hundreds of examples in life like that. Hundreds. Yeah. Hundreds of examples like this exist where you have your own this thing. So a healthy self-esteem is necessary for the understanding of Vedanta. Okay. Any other questions on this or shall we go ahead? Okay. There are any questions? Sure, you can type it and I'll be able to see it on the screen immediately. Because see, this is understanding Vedanta is a very, in one way it's very, very simple. After all, it is what you are. But your mind plays games, Mind is very complex. Therefore, we need all these factors to be taken care of. What is that question? I didn't see that question clearly. Can you just repeat that question again? Somebody just now typed a question and I was changing. Third line. Okay, the third line. Tatha baddhavad bhati yo mooda drishte. Similarly, mooda drishte. Okay. Mooda drishte. Baddhavad bhati. It appears as though it is bound. For people who are ignorant, the Atma appears bound. Like how the sun appears to be covered by the cloud, but a cloud cannot cover the sun. Similarly, Atma appears to be bound, though really speaking it cannot be bound by anything. It's ever free. Sa nityopalabdhi swarupoham Atma. That is what I am. Okay? Yeah. Because you cannot even say you are bound. It feels like that when you are studying. Yeah. Okay. 2 questions have come up. I will handle that. How do you understand the fine difference between self-esteem and being respectful? Okay. Healthy self-esteem, and the other question was how do we develop self-esteem? Okay. Now, how do we develop self-esteem is a big question. In fact, once I did an 8-part workshop, each part of having about 3 hours each, okay, on self-esteem. This is put up on my website, vedicwisdom.in. All of you can see it, but there is one rider to it. Okay, there is one rider to it. That is, my website will be down for some time because there is some problem of virus etc. in it, and we have taken it down, and when we had to take it down, we said we might as well redesign the whole thing. So because of that, it will take some time. But after we come back, definitely that part will be up. In the workshop section, you will find 8 points on how to develop your self-esteem. 8 pillars on where your edifice of self-esteem will rest. Okay. Now, if you have a healthy self-esteem, you will respect others, you will respect yourself. Both will be very, very natural to you. You will respect yourself, you will respect others. Someone who has a low self-esteem or is submissive will not respect oneself, will respect others. Somebody who is arrogant does not really respect himself, but puts on a show and keeps demanding respect from others. Now, if the mentor has been someone like that, and you show a healthy respect towards that person, remember, low self-esteem is like an empty well. However much you put in, not enough. Not enough. Like a bottomless pit. However much respect you show, there will be enough. And if you are in a close, friendly relationship with that person, however much respect you show, will not be enough. You'll always find some points to say, see, you're disrespecting. It's a no-win game. Don't play the game, get out of it. If you have a healthy self-esteem, you'll get out of that type of an interaction. Why? It's not healthy for you. Unhealthy. Yeah, you was a mentor when you joined the office. When was that? 20 years back. So, what are you still keeping? Why are you still tied to his apron strings? Because we are used to being tied to our mama's apron strings. Why am I using the word apron string? There's an old song like that. The song of the old sailor. And I identify with that very well. Okay. I lived in the West when I was a boy. And the roses nigh covered my home. But the life of a sailor was all my joy. And the life of a sailor was all my joy. My mother, she wept. Instead of sailor, now I have to replace it by sadhu. Okay. Then it fits in very well. My mother, she wept and she begged me stay, anchored for life to her apron strings. But the life of a sadhu was all my joy. So on a moonlit night, I slipped away. So similarly, we have a lot of apron strings in life, you know. Yeah, we have a lot of apron strings. Tires here, tires there. And then you say, I want freedom. These are things you can knock off yourself. All you need is somebody, a psychologist, a teacher, a guru, someone just pointing out, hey, this is a problem area, knock it off. Don't get stuck. Don't get stuck. If you have a healthy self-esteem, you will do it. If you don't have it, mark khayega. What can I do? I can only teach. I can't make you do anything. I don't want to make you do anything. Also, up to you to do it or not. It's your life. Your life. Yeah. Swamiji, I made my bed, now I have to lie in it. No? Who said so? Change your bed. Who said, you made your bed, now lie in it? I'd rather sleep on the floor. Go. I don't want your bed. I know I made the bed, but I don't want it. What is preventing you? All these slogans? These are not great sayings, these are slogans, okay? You made your bed, now lie in it. Throw off the bed. So what if I made it? I'll make another one. That is what someone with healthy self-esteem will say. You won't live your life guided by slogans. These are all slogans people live. You know? I can't even talk about it as some great sayings. All nonsensical slogans. Yeah. Sayings of the great. ठीक है, ठीक है. It's like this person saying, Rava de, Rava de. A Guju joke as far as self-esteem is concerned. This couple got a job in, couple meaning separately, as one man and a woman got a job in a city. They had both gone to interview together. I'll answer that. Please repeat that question after I complete this little story, okay? So this man and woman got a job in the city. They had gone for the interview together. They were hired the same day. They went to the induction program the same day. So they came to the city and they were looking for places to stay. They had to find a place to stay. So they found a small cottage, but it had only one bedroom. So both of them decided, see, we are two independent people and we are very clear about our value structure, etc. So no problems, we can share that bedroom. And we will save money. Then when we find the money to move separate, we will move separate. They said, okay, fine. So, the first day, night, they are going to bed. The lady went in first and put a pillow between both of them. Demarcation of area. The man was also very happy and went on. This went on for 6 months. Then there was a office party, Christmas party, last December. With COVID restrictions, everything was a party. So the party, the girl said, I'm getting tired of this, I want to go home. The man said, I want to take some more time, I'll take some more time. You go ahead. So she went ahead. When the man came, he found the gate locked. So he told from outside, hey, open the gate. How will I come inside? So I'm already in bed. I'm not going to open the gate. If you don't open the gate, I'll jump over the gate and come. So the woman says, Ravade, Ravade. 6 months you couldn't jump over a pillow of 4 inches. And you're going to jump in one night, 5 foot high gate? Forget it. Question of self-esteem, okay? It's a joke. I'm not encouraging a wrong value structure, but I'm pointing out, okay? Even to do something like that requires some self-esteem inside. Okay? Yeah. Yeah. This is a knack I developed from Pooja Swamiji. You pick up stories here and there and use it appropriately, okay? Yeah. So, the question of developing a healthy self-esteem. Then somebody had asked a question, with a limited mind, can you understand the limitless Atma? Yes, you can, because it happens to be yourself. The limited mind cannot objectify a limitless Atma. But the limitless mind can turn itself into the thought of recognition. I am not the mere mind. I am the limitlessness itself. The thought is, I am not a mind, I am that limitless Atma itself. So the wave that is there, a thought, instead of being separate from the awareness, resolves into awareness in that recognition. Not without recognition. The mind can be resolved into awareness without recognition, like how you do in sleep or in samadhi. But this is with recognition. In the light of that recognition, yes, I am that limitlessness. The thought that came up in recognition is resolved into that pure awareness. And what remains there is only one awareness with that cognition. Yes. So the limitless Atma, I, because all this is possible only because it happens to be I, because it is the truth of the mind as well. It is the truth of the thought. That's why I said in meditation, every thought is born in you awareness. It dies down into you awareness. Because of that, that limitless mind can gain that understanding. Because you who took yourself to be separate now recognizes that you are nothing but that, but the Nitya Upalabdhi Surupoham Atma. You recognize that Atma, that limitlessness. That limitlessness has not yet come out in the verses. I will bring it out in the next session. I will bring it out elaborately. I still have time. Okay, I still have time, so no problems. So that limitlessness will become clear because it happens to be me, and the mind is not separate from the Atma, which is limitlessness. If the mind was separate, no way you can get it. No way. Then mind will also become limited, Atma will also become limited. Why? It is separate, no? It's separate, it's not. If it is separate, you'll never get it. Atma will not become limitlessness. It is separate in the sense it is independent. That even if the thought is not there, I am there. When you say separateness, this is what we mean. Drik Drishya Viveka, that seers in logic we use to understand this. That thought is there, I am there. Thought is not there, I am still there. I am the seer of the thought when the thought is there. I am the seer of the absence of thought when the thought is not there. I am always there. So that seers in logic is used to point out Nitya Upalabdhi Swarupaha. Then the Upanishad comes into the picture to show that this Nitya Upalabdhi Swarupa Atma is nothing but limitlessness itself. It is for that step, for clarity in that step, that Hastamalaka decided to go with Shankara to learn. That he wrote all these verses to show Shankara, this much I know, but the final step is in your hands. This much I know. That's why he is considered one of the greatest Sishyas of Shankara. This much I know. Final step can't be taken without the Guru's grace. Without the teaching, it cannot be taken. Guru's grace, people will again misunderstand it to be something else, some divine hocus pocus. No. Without the teaching, it won't work. The final step cannot be taken. Yeah. To understand that the nature of consciousness is nothing but limitlessness itself. That the nature of consciousness is nothing but limitlessness. Therefore, that step still has to be taken. So that aspect of it, okay, that limitlessness part of it, Hastamalaka is indicating in the last two verses. Because remember, okay, a student always has to be understood in the cultural context from where he comes. That means what? You have to understand yourself in your own cultural context. The teacher also has to do that. That's why the teacher encourages questions. Because when you ask a question, we know where you are coming from. Okay? Like we have always found this. We get a lot of international students in the ashram. Especially from Brazil. Because my Guru Ben, Gloria, has been teaching there for 35 years. Like me teaching in Bombay, she has been teaching in Rio for years and years. That is why the government gave her a Padma Shri. Why? In an alien land. What do all of you remember Rio and all as? For? Okay, Christianity, that is one thing. And what else? Carnivals, exactly. Gala time, the beaches. As a sailor, I will say babes and beaches, okay? That's how I remember Rio as. And in the setup like that, this lady has been teaching for more than 3 decades. For me to teach in Bombay is easy. I sit under a tree and teach, somebody will gather around anyway. Somebody will offer bhiksha. Somebody will offer something. हो जाएगा. But there to study. They don't call her a guru or something. They say she's a professor. It's a cultural context. So her student, some of you met him, Jonas, in the Vedic Wisdom Festival. He was there. Okay. He came to study years later. He was along with Swamini, same batch. 2010 batch in the ashram, Coimbatore. So, we all study. But when they come, we have to take into account the cultural context, no? Of where they come from. For them, if you mention Ishvara, God, etc., they can't relate. It's related only in Christian terms. It's only related in Christian terms. God sitting in heaven, etc., which either they are devoted to, or because they come to Vedanta means they are rejecting and looking for other things. Therefore, if you mention God, it becomes a little bit. It takes time for them to relate to the temple. At least 6 months before they make a hesitant entry into the temple. Why? Because cultural background is different. Similarly, one has to take into account Hastamalaka's cultural context. Yeah, you have to take that into account. Hastamalaka grew up in India, in Bharata. Okay. Somewhere, I think Mysore, that side he was. I'm not sure exactly of the place. I have not looked into Shankara Digvijayam for a long time. Okay. I have not looked into Shankara Digvijayam for a long time, so I'll have to look into that.
Can't hear you, Swamiji. Can't see you.
Can you hear me now?
Now,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. So, Hastamalaka grew up in the Indian context. And in those days, there is no Indian who would have missed hearing all this. In those days, remember, he was younger, but he was a contemporary of Sureshwaracharya. Much younger than him, old enough only to be his son actually. But he is a contemporary. And that was a time when the culture, lot of philosophical debates and discussions were happening. Nowadays, what debate and discussion happen? Farm agitation. That's all that is happening, cultural. Or COVID. Yeah, Punjab Occasion has found out Sri Bali village in Karnataka. I knew you were somewhere in Karnataka, but not the village. Yeah. Therefore, Karnataka South was culturally rich always. Even though the South had a lot of Muslim domination, etc., was there, some Muslim kings, etc., Tipu Sultan and breaking of temples, etc., was there, still it was culturally rich. And this happened before that time. Okay. It was culturally rich. Since culturally rich, naturally, someone like Hastamalaka would have been exposed to this culture, this learning, etc. So he had definitely knew something about it. He was not just an ordinary student, he was a very informed student. Informed student. Who needed only some fine tuning here and there, a little bit brushing up here and there. That's all he needed. It's a blessing to get a teacher like Shankara. It's also a blessing to get a student like Hastamalaka. I'm sure Shankara must have felt blessed to get a student like Shankara. It takes some blessing to get that. Like how people want a great guru. Gurus want great students also, you know. Gurus don't want idiots as students. Though will teach all students, that's a different thing. Yeah. But a great student is good to get. So, similarly, Hastamalaka was very well informed. Okay? He just needed some validation and some clarity in the thing. Okay. Therefore, we will read this and look into it a little bit. In the afternoon session, I'll clarify the whole thing, including the limitlessness, etc. That's coming in the last two verses. Okay. He says, Samasteshu vastusu anustyamaekam samastani vastuni yanta prashanti viyadvat sada shuddham swachhaswarupam शुद्धं च स्वरूपं स नित्योपलब्धि स्वरूपोऽहमात्मा समय समस्तेषु वस्तेषु अनुस्यूतमेकं, that which pervades all the things that are there in this universe, in this multiverse, that which pervades everything. Samastani vastuni yanna sprishanti, that which cannot be tainted by any of these objects. Space pervades everything, but nothing can touch space. Similarly, I, the consciousness, pervades everything, but nothing can touch me. Okay. Vyadvat sada, like the space, that's the example. Shuddham. Shuddham Achsarupam. Okay. Free from any bondage, etc. Achasarupam. Okay. The Surupam is free from being from any contact, completely asangaha, untouched by anything. Okay. Sa nityopalabdhi swarupoham atma. That Atma I am. Okay. It is on these two verses that he shows that Hastamalaka knew, but he needed validation, he needed clarification. Okay. He needed that validation and that clarification. How exactly that Atma is limitlessness itself. Okay. How, if it is limitless, it is in and through everything. How, if this Atma is the cause for the universe, everything has manifested from it, how come it still remains unchanged, independent, etc.? How it is unconditioned by time and space? But still time and space manifest from it. How the reality is untouched by any of the manifestations. How it is independent of all the manifestation. This clarity on this, he knew, he had an apata jnanam over it. Why am I saying that? Why? Because the verse says that she knew. If he knew, why did he want to be a student? An apata jnanam was there. Clarity and validation is what he wanted. Why apata jnanam? Because he is exposed to it. Sadhus travel all over the country, those days by foot. And rainy season, Chaturmasya, 4 pakshas. Okay, they would stay put in a village. So I'm sure sadhus came in this village. And the rainy season, villages are relatively free. Farmers are relatively free. Because they just have to see that the thing is not flooded out, that there is enough place for the water to flow through, and take care of it. Because the crop planting, transplanting, etc. has happened. Now you are waiting for the crop to grow. When the crop is ripening, you have to pay some attention to it, because there will be enough things to come and eat away the ripened crop. But now it's still growing, so farmers are relaxed. So Chaturmasya, what will they do? 2 months camp, the sadhu is conducting in the village. The village temple was the center of learning. So in the village temple, the sadhu will sit and those in front of him he will teach. It's those wandering sadhus that kept this knowledge alive, I'm telling you. Yeah. That was their outreach to people who may not be able to come to Rishikesh to learn. It's an outreach by them. So they travel and they talk. So I'm sure Hastamalaka was also exposed to a lot of that. They exposed to a lot of that. And then, when the time came when he found a great master, he revealed to the master what he knows, so that the master can tell him what he doesn't. He also reveals what he has an inkling of in the last two verses, but wanted validation and clarity. Okay. From the master that he is on the right track. Yeah, that's correct. Otherwise, there is no need for him to go and become a student of Shankara. I am not showing my disrespect to Astamalaka by saying he still had to know. Because what is the need for being a student then? At the end of it, he could have told Shankara, see, this I know. I want sannyasa from a teacher. Please give me sannyasa. He could have said that. And Shankara would have happily given it to him also, if he knew the truth. Even otherwise, he would have been given sannyasa. Why? It's called Vividisha sannyasa. For the sake of knowing, you take sannyasa, cut all your bonds and go and learn. Become independent and learn. That's also acceptable. In fact, that's part of the tradition. Vividisha sannyasa. If he knew, he could have taken Vidvat by himself. Or Vividisha by asking directly, see, I know all this. I am showing you I know all this. I am ready for sannyasa. Just for an external thing. But he wanted to be a student. That shows the difference. That certain clarity, etc. He still needed that. Certain clarity, he still needed. We also need a lot of clarity. But not a problem. I still have one full class to do that. I'm sure, okay, not all of you, because I know there are some people who have not heard of me talking about the Atma being unconditioned by time and space. So I'll touch upon that. Most of my students would have heard about that, but I'll touch upon that in the evening class. And also, or maybe I'll start right now. Okay, not right now, because there's still a few minutes left. Okay. Now, if you are talking about the self, the Atma, if you have to show the Atma as limitlessness, then you have to see two things. That it is unconditioned by time and space. Okay. To show it's unconditioned by time and space, we may have to, this is a method I use often. There can be other ways of doing it also. To show it unconditioned by time, we have to look at what is the truth of time. As I said before, we use today, because scientific knowledge is the current paradigm that we think and function under. We'll go by that definition. Time is nothing but a gap between two events. What that event is up to our definition. Because there is no event without an observer. Therefore, it's for us to decide what that event is. Olden days, sunrise, sunset was good enough. Agrarian society. So we didn't need fine measurements of time. But as we started international travel or scientific progress, we needed finer and finer measurements of time. But the basic definition remained between the gap between two events. So in modern days, the event was decided the pulse of a quartz. Most of you wear watches which are quartz watches. So the pulse of a quartz was considered one unit. Therefore, one unit, one pulse, another pulse. And they have definition what type of quartz it should be, all that elaborateness is there. So the gap between one pulse and another pulse is 1 unit of time. That means two observations. First observation, second observation. Gap is time. Two observations are nothing but two thoughts. Two Observations are nothing but two thoughts. Therefore, the gap between two thoughts is 1 unit of time. That's why subjectively, time seems to be so long. When is Swamiji going to start? Stop, yaar. Book lag raha hai idhar. Long. Oh, it is so interesting. Oh God, 1 hour has already gone. Short. Subjective. There is a subjective component to it. It looks objective, but actually it's right here. If it is purely objective, everything should age at the same time frame. No? But people are different, the ideas are different, the subjective concept of time is different. But gap between two thoughts remain. And what is there between two thoughts? We saw in meditation. What is there between two thoughts is me awareness alone. So the thoughts that come up doesn't disturb me. How can the gap between two thoughts limit me? When the two thoughts, one thought, a wave in awareness, second thought, a wave in awareness, when that wave cannot displace me awareness, how can the gap between the two waves limit me awareness? So I awareness is unconditioned by time, and anything that's unconditioned by time is also unconditioned by space, because space time continuum is one. Thanks to Stephen Hawking, I don't want to go into it too elaborately. So I, the consciousness, unconditioned by time and space, therefore limitless. There is more to it. Yes, there is more to it. What about the object outside, etc.? All that is there. Those things, and there are last these two verses, and that we will see at 4 o'clock. With all of you being muted also, I can hear some rumblings in stomach, other than my own. My lunch is usually late, okay? Yeah. But I can sense those rumblings. Therefore, we'll take a break now and meet again at 4 o'clock in the evening, okay?
Thank you, Swamiji.
Yeah. Om Tat Sat. Take care.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you all. Take care.
Namaskar, Swamiji. Namaskar.
Thank you.
Namaskar. Thank you.
Hari Om, Swamiji.
Hari Om Ji. Take care.
Swamiji